Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Happy Thanksgiving Day.
Happy Thanksgiving, guys. So, we should be happy for all the blessings that are bestowed upon us. If you guys are feasting right now with your families, loved ones, friends, maybe take a little bit extra time today to really be thankful because, as we know, the condition that we find the globe in is a very, very precarious one, and it is global. It's not just the United States. The United States is definitely going through some major upheaval right now.
It most definitely is. And, I don't know what future holidays are going to look like. So, this holiday, I would truly treasure the time with your loved ones because that might become a little further and fewer and further between.
Yeah, before we get into today and everything that's going on today in this world, I just wanted to take a look back as we were saying before. So many things that we were brought up with just weren't really so accurate, to put it lightly. The conceptions of reality that we were growing up with as, me, I was a kid growing up in the 70s and 80s. And, we had this vision, although a lot of us then, I think, were feeling already just like our generation just right before me, like my sister's generation in the 60s, we're starting to kind of have a feeling like there's something wrong with the world system. It's time to make some sort of change. And then, it just has progressed throughout time.
Well, the stories that we were told and the reasons we were told to celebrate certain days, they're not really as true as they could be.
Yeah, and we equate the word apocalypse again with death and destruction and, end of the world things. In reality, what it is the great unveiling. And as we've said before in videos, it's the pulling the curtain and seeing the great Wizard of Oz for who it is.
I think one thing to help us get through this time in our lives is be open to change and be open to accepting that things might not be the way you thought they were, and that's okay.
Yeah, in this reality, things are are not so black and white. There are a billion, trillion shades of gray, and that's the reality of things. Although there are still certain things we could say are pretty wrong, and certain things we could say are pretty right. And again, we have to look at the totality, at the whole, because we're going from a form of consciousness, a form of awareness, in which has been just all about, for instance, the solar plexus chakra. It's all about me. I am me. And we're going into a unity consciousness. We're moving up from the third chakra up into the fourth chakra, heart-centered unity consciousness. Understanding or beginning to understand that we're part of something that's much bigger. We're a piece of the whole. We're a cell in the body.
We are. And in moving to the heart chakras, they're getting larger, they're getting bigger. And a lot of people have blocks in the heart chakras, and it could actually be painful.
Well, yeah. Again, all disease starts as dis-ease, starts as emotions, unless you're, in a car accident, broken arm, broken leg, things like that, intentional or unintentional poisoning, things of this nature. Disease starts as repressed emotions we can't deal with, and then it'll sink in and manifest in physical ways. And everything is speeding up right now, so that whole process is speeding up, and many people are purging right now, and this is the time definitely to cleanse and purge. And I know many people will be many people will be feasting, and Cindy and I will be fasting today, as just a point of, we have to make change ourselves in our own life. We have to keep progressing in a more spiritual manner.
Absolutely. And that's what's going to help keep us above water from sinking into certain depressions because of the way our world is today.
Yeah, it's easy to get overwhelmed when you look at the news, for sure. And as we were talking about these things that we were brought up with, like thinking Christopher Columbus, for instance, was, an amazing man, and we had reverence for him, have a holiday for him. And yet we saw an awakening where people were feeling resentment and tearing down statues of him and throwing them into the ocean and the bays. And, the recognition of how this country was founded and what it was founded on, just to give you, for instance, it's an awareness that has come up now, that people understand that, for instance, in 1492, there were probably about 60 million people living here already. 60 million people living here already. And, they had about 10% of the land they were using as for farming purposes. And of course, many of the tribes were more still hunter-gatherers, just basically subsisting off of what they find. But there was a great reverence for the land itself and the indigenous people. They had a different way of life. They understood, the land itself as the great mother, and you wouldn't, treat your mother badly now.
No, of course not. You would be respectful to your mother.
And then they viewed their father as the great spirit in the sky.
Mm-hmm. Mother Earth and Father Sky.
So by the time, the European colonization was over, 90% of the indigenous people were dead. This is a massive genocide, much larger than World War II, that we saw as far as the genocide aspects of it, although all war is, it's just an atrocity.
Oh, it's so horrible and sad.
A lot of them died from different diseases like measles and smallpox, flu, bubonic plague. But then, as we know, there was smallpox blankets given to them purposefully. And of course, many of them were forced to convert or, perish as well as their belief system was crushed. So only about 10% of the population ended up surviving. So that's incredible. You're talking about tens of millions of people, 54 million people exterminated. Their belief system, their way of life, just exterminated, and then the remainders of them, basically, if they could either be assimilated into the new society, just like Rome did, or they could be herded up into some of the worst lands in the country for, surviving.
I know, it's just really putrid, horrifying what they've done.
In World War II, the absolute total of everybody that died was 80 million people. And that was 3% of the world's population, at that time. It died because of the war. 3%, 80 million people in World War II. So, basically 54 to 56 million people died in this European invasion of the Americas, which was a much higher percent. About 10% of the total global population was wiped out in this.
And that's just terrible.
It is. It's such an atrocity, and perhaps I'm a little bit more sensitive to it because when I look into the faces, like this face, I could see my father's face, and so maybe that's why, for me, it's personally, well, it's a little more personal.
Yeah, and then there's DNA memories. So if you have the Native American in your blood and there was horrible things that happened to your family, your ancestors, that actually carries over to you.
When we look at, again, the Roman Empire, for instance, you really had to assimilate. You had to adopt and adapt and take, their gods on, for instance. And we have so many times when the gods, quote unquote, overlapped. And there's reasons why. And there's reasons why, all of our history has been so whitewashed and changed. And the whole perception's changed, like we had talked about. And, the founding fathers. And I had great reverence for them as well. And for most of my life, until I went super deep, I used to study that time period greatly and love that time period. And then, the understanding of, so many of them being in the secret societies, and so many of the secret societies were taken over by this dark energy, this dark force. There were some that were more benevolent, that were overcome by the dark force that's been ruling humanity. And, the reality is, as we had said before, so many of the founding fathers, actually held slaves, and they didn't view people from Africa, for instance, as being equal to them.
I know the hypocrisy is just horrendous, and it's so great. It's almost hard to fathom nowadays.
Especially because, and I keep going back and quoting the Bhagavad Gita because there's so much beauty in it. Worn out bodies are discarded by the user just as worn out garments. So, we all have our favorite shirts, our favorite jackets, things like that, but, we wouldn't kill over them.
Oh, no.
And in fact, Jesus said, if somebody asks for your cloak, give them your tunic too. So it's the exact opposite of what we've been taught by all these great masters that have come throughout time, like Jesus and like Buddha and so many others, just countless others, and trying to bring the wisdom to us, to wake us up, to get out of this system that is so decimating the planet and everybody and everything on it.
Right. I mean, we need to be open-minded enough to learn from all of these ascended masters, not just one.
We can only be said to be alive in those moments when our hearts are conscious of our treasures. That's a beautiful statement, and it gets me thinking of Yogananda's teachings. And Yogananda did a great series of books and comparing the teachings of Christ and Krishna, and the people that I've met that have studied from the Self-Realization Fellowship are all touched. You could tell that these people are touched with love. They are so changed. Yogananda's teachings really change hearts. But there's other great masters as well. So, again, we need to grow this sense of tolerance. And everybody is unique. We're all beautiful, unique expressions of divinity. And that's the way Source, Creator, God with the big G, intended it. Otherwise, we wouldn't see so much variation. We just would be, a world of clones if that's the way the true Creator wanted it.
Well, yeah, we should be more in awe of each other, knowing that we are individual expressions of divinity and not against each other.
So we need to be holding that love and compassion in our hearts. So when we're giving thanks, we should also look out to what everybody else is going through and recognize what they're going through in these times, as these times are not hitting all of us equally. Some are being hit much, much harder than others. As right now, the lines for the food banks are at record levels. And we know we are heading into a time that is going to make the Great Depression look mild in comparison.
Yeah, so I feel it's really important these holidays to really enjoy your loved ones.
And, we see this horrible mindset out there and the leadership all around that is really not pro-life. They are putting the illusion on that they're pro-life. But again, it's say one thing, do another. And we're waking up to that and recognizing it's just not right. And so, we're seeing certain places like the UK, that, for instance, is going to be deploying the army. And it makes me feel that most definitely we're not in any different times than when the Roman Empire ruled, the greater part of Europe. These are very, very similar times. We have that same mindset, that same, you must comply, you must capitulate, you must become part of the Borg.
Right, and they start us very, very young when it comes to compliance.
Again, we're all unique individuals. We have pockets of resistance that are building where people will not comply with becoming part of the Borg, and we're seeing it. There's a Colorado county that's refusing to enforce lockdowns, and civil disobedience is spreading. And it's interesting to see this, because Weld County, Colorado, which is in the northeastern part of the state, above Denver there, it's got a population of about 250,000 people. They're not going to comply. Right. And this is what we were getting from the guides and telling you guys. And this is what the guides have been telling us right now. They're telling us to wait, watch, look, listen, and then react, because we are going to be we're going to be migrating, guys. I mean, many people think, oh, I'm all set. I got my spot and this, and I'm all set. I could, hold out for 2 or 3 years perhaps with the food I have stocked up and, the garden or farm that's going. But then you might find yourself in a state or even in a state or a county in a state that's going to impose things that you're not going to be able to go along with, or you're going to have to decide, okay, do I just allow myself to be assimilated into the Borg because life will be easier for me? And that's what they're counting on.
Right. What we're watching for is we're watching these counties to see which ones are going to push back for personal freedoms and which ones are just going to roll over and take it.
Exactly. And, so Weld County, Colorado, they are just saying no. And, there's other little isolated incidences. To me, this feels like we're starting to have those triggering events that are really going to pull and separate everybody. And you're going to, find yourself in this pocket or that pocket. There's a barbecue place up in Canada that's refusing to shut down. And they just like an hour ago took the owner away in handcuffs. He was arrested. Wow. And again, the question comes up, and we were talking to one of our lovely family members, Tina, over in New Zealand. We love you, Tina. And we have so many people in New Zealand and in Australia, a ton of family members, and also the UK and Canada. And those areas are going to be faced with some of the most severe lockdowns. And isn't it fascinating, too, that when you look at those areas, like 90%, well, if you put the UK out of it, but if you look at Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, there's so much land, and 90% of it or better is still owned by the crown. Not the people, the crown. And so, as I've been saying, the Roman Empire never died. It's just changed. And it really goes back to the Sumerians, as we've been saying. So we do see that there are people that will just simply say, I can't go along with this. I just can't go along with this. They're not trying to start trouble, quote unquote. They're just saying, hey, I'm a unique individual, and I have my rights, and I don't want to become part of your machine, part of your Borg. We had the Supreme Court give a ruling that the governor of New York calls irrelevant. Wow. I mean, when you think of that, okay, so he's defying the Supreme Court. And this is exactly what we've been saying going back all year, really, but especially in August when we got the message, that things are going to really, really heat up to a level that most people are going to find completely shocking and unbelievable.
Yes, they absolutely are. It's like when they had the election and the results, what they showed me was like imagine an egg, and say the egg gets hit and you see all these little cracks all over this egg, and now start to imagine these cracks are spreading and pieces are falling apart and it's crumbling. That's kind of where we're at now.
Yeah, it is starting, and there's going to be some huge revelations and twists coming that's going to make everything that has come before look like nothing. And so, again, it's that preparedness, the spiritual preparedness is the most important. And for Cindy and I, we've been working on trying to get our bodies used to tougher times, as well as, the spirit. And we've really been connecting with multiple meditations a day and helping as many people as we can, getting out in nature. And when I look at like the scenery here of where I was brought up in New England, and I think of those days past, it could easily make you so nostalgic. On a personal note, when my father passed away, everything just, in our family kind of disintegrated because he was the glue. He was a strong, quiet, silent type who never really spoke up much, and that was because of his Catholic upbringing, where if he did speak up, they would get whacked. And at the same time, he was such a positive force, and very, very loving, and very, very compassionate, very, very gentle. Even though he was a very large man, not fat, but just a big guy, who at first, he could feel more imposing until you feel his energy, which was just beautiful, and very, very, very patient and tolerant. And when his energy left the family on a personal level, we all kind of fragmented a lot. And it's never been the same, but that again is part of growth, because things don't stay the same. And we could look back to those old days, perhaps when we were much more in the matrix, and feel nostalgic because we thought that the politicians perhaps were really trying to do things for our best interest, and that everything was really peachy keen, and all American apple pie. And then you slowly start to recognize things going back to, say, the Vietnam War, that these wars were not necessarily about freedom and justice and securing freedom for people. You start to realize the bigger picture and just what has been going on, and we really can't go back to that as much as we'd like to.
Oh no, once you wake up, you're awake.
It's totally that. It's that red pill, blue pill. Once you take the pill, you can't go back into that matrix no matter how hard you try.
Absolutely not, right?
And so that's what we're faced with. We're faced with the realization of the matrix that we've been in. And yet today, being Thanksgiving, we recognize all that's wrong with Thanksgiving as far as what was done to the indigenous people, but we should always, have thanks every day in our heart for the blessings of being able to be with those people that we love and cherish.
Yes, we definitely want to highlight the beauty of this, because being with your family this time is nostalgic, and that part of everything is okay. And I encourage people to really embrace this time, and just sort of separate things. And it's okay to do that. You can separate things and just appreciate the love going around today.
And, that is if you guys are allowed to have your gatherings.
Right.
As, so many places now, you're not even allowed to have your gatherings. As, it just seems like they're trying to strip away all the humanity in humanity.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So even if you're having cyber gatherings, give thanks, and give thanks for more than that, and give thanks for the earth itself, that it may be restored to what it could be and what it was in the past, before the whole system that we find ourselves in has so raped, pillaged, and plundered it.
I know, right? Yeah.
Guys, we want to thank you also for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. As always, God bless and namaste.
God bless and namaste.